Hello, welcome to my channel. I hope you're doing well. So we have a couple series of videos to do, and I gotta do it as fast as I can. I do have a very important message for someone as well. So the next video I recommend for you to watch, meaning the next video after this video, because this video is going to be from I have a couple that I recorded already that I haven't been able to edit. So this is going to be the edited version. So it wasn't on this day that I'm talking, but then again, all my messages, most of them are in divine timing, are timeless. So, and most of the time I'm also learning as well that whatever has been predicted and other prophecies and stuff like that, videos, is actually happening as we speak. We're here for those who are newbie here. Hello. We are here to help with enlightenment, okay? Going into alignment to your own higher self, Christ consciousness, which comes with a lot of the colonization and heavy talks and a lot of grieving, a lot of witnessing and bear witness, okay? I want to remind all of you. I will add warning from now on the titles and stuff, because I see that a lot of people are like, whoa, what were we just talking about a Holy Spirit message, and then we have like evidence and facts and things that popping out. And I'm just letting you guys know that whatever is shown here, it is sent to the ICC and the ICJ. And I'm literally have to legally say that now, because the amount of censorship, suppression, and trying to block any content, okay, talking about Gaza, Palestine, and the West Bank, and what is still ongoing genocide, okay, just letting you guys know, it doesn't stop for them. Which is why for a lot of us who have the privilege to speak up, which is why they are suppressing and trying to block the truth and trying for people not to see it. And this guy really says it really clear, so it's very beautiful that he says that, okay? But just remember this. Actually, I did put it on the stories as well, so please go like the stories, the shorts on the stories on shorts here on YouTube, but also anywhere, okay, where I post this, okay?
I'm gonna say in this video may get me in a lot of trouble, but I'm gonna say it either way. For every single person out here needs to understand this and think about what I'm about to say really good. 1% rule the whole world of the population. 4% are manipulated like puppets. And 90% are unaware of anything of what's happening in the world. Go to work, go home, eat, sleep. Go to work, come back home, eat, sleep. That is what they know. And 5% only out of the whole population knows the truth. The 4% of the people who are being puppets are trying to prevent the 5% of the people that knows the truth from waking up the 90% of the population. I invite you right now to wake up and be a part of the 5% that's waking up the 90%. Social media is the key. Let's not stop.
Despite David Lammy saying he was going to suspend some arms supplies to Israel, 300 licenses are still in force. The cosmetic exercise of cancelling 30 licenses, we were assured by him a few minutes later, will make no difference to Israel's ability to wage military conflict. So what is the point of it other than a cosmetic exercise to try and buy a bit of peace for the government? Well, I'm not here to give peace to those people that are supplying weapons, that are raining down on children in Gaza. I'm not here to make life easy for the weapons manufacturers. We are here because we want to see an end to the conflict by a ceasefire, by the withdrawal of all Israeli forces from Gaza and the West Bank. So I ask myself this question: if this was any other country in the world, would Britain still be supplying weapons? Would we still be having a normal relationship with that government? No, of course we wouldn't. And so, the demand to stop all arms supplies is a very strong and very serious one. It's not just arms supplies, it is the technology that goes with them, it is the surveillance flights that take place over Gaza, it is what happens to that information collected by those surveillance flights, it is what is going on at Royal Air Force Base in Akrotiri as a staging point towards taking weapons into Israel. Therefore, keep on growing the numbers, because that makes a lot of people very, very nervous, and that itself will bring about that sense of international solidarity. We cannot be silent, we cannot be idle, we cannot just be spectators. We have got to do everything we can to support the rights of the Palestinian people to be able to live in peace. The occupation has gone on longer than my lifetime.
I am horrified at the fact that 179 of our fellow Palestinian healthcare workers are in Israeli detention. I'm going to play a message that was sent by a young Palestinian surgeon called Khalid al-Sir.
All of the doctors, nurses and healthcare workers were taken outside the building, away from their patients, and all the soldiers surrounding us, pointing their guns against us. Some of our colleagues were beaten, the Israeli army, laughing at us, humiliating us.
The 179 Palestinian healthcare workers have either disappeared or we believe are in Israeli detention at the moment. The protest is call obviously for their immediate release, but also to call for an immediate end to the ongoing violence.
So I'm here today because I'm a Palestinian healthcare worker, and I have seen with my own eyes how the Israeli occupation and the Israeli occupying forces has systematically targeted the healthcare sector.
These are disappeared health workers, intentionally taken and intentionally being tortured for being health workers. The government today needs to exert maximum pressure on the Israeli government to call for a ceasefire.
This commenter says that Kamala also has shown that she is open to changing her position, and she openly advocated for working towards a two-state solution on the debate stage. And what I would say to that is every president has openly advocated for a two-state solution ever since 1948. Think about that statement for a second. Ever since 1948, the President of the United States has advocated for a two-state solution. That's Truman.
I had to make a compromise with the Arabs and divide Palestine. There are a lot of Jewish people against me because they want the whole of Palestine. As I say, they want to drive all the Arabs into the Tigris and Euphrates River.
To Reagan.
We paid special attention to two issues: our commitment to Israel's security and well-being, and our shared desire to move forward together toward a just and lasting peace between Israel and all its Arab neighbors.
To Bill Clinton.
Understanding that there is no alternative to the path of peace their people have traveled so far along in the last few years. Second, to get the Israelis and Palestinians talking again at the highest levels. And third, to help both parties return to the hard work of building peace through negotiations.
To George W. Bush.
My vision is two states living side by side in peace and security.
Obama.
It's more vital than ever. Both Israelis and Palestinians find a way to get back to the table and begin negotiating a process whereby they can create two states that are living side by side in peace and security.
Donald Trump.
My vision presents a win-win opportunity for both sides, a realistic two-state solution that resolves the risk of Palestinian statehood to Israel's security.
Joe Biden.
My commitment to that goal of a two-state solution has not changed in all these years. Two states along the 1967 lines were mutually agreed to swaps, and the best way to achieve equal measure of security, prosperity.
And Kamala Harris.
And ultimately, I remain committed to a path forward that can lead to a two-state.
All of them say this. It is part of the job. The two-state solution is a euphemism for Israeli expansion into the greater state of Israel, which is Israel's ultimate goal and always has been. The two-state solution represents incremental Israeli expansion and also normalizing territories that they have illegally occupied already. The main difference between Israel and other criminals is that criminals usually try to hide their crimes, whereas Israel live streams them and then brags about them on national television afterwards. The two-state solution is a political football, and it is a touchdown because it's working on you. Every president must adopt the rhetoric of a two-state solution. It comes with the job. They wouldn't be president of the United States if they were anti-Israel. Both Democrat and Republican leadership, who are owned by the same class of people, have realized that all they must do is pay lip service to the public about a two-state solution and a path to peace, and subsequently commit to no meaningful action. We are enabling this. This comment is proof that the manufacturing of consent is working. Come on, big dog, don't be blind. The answer is staring at you, right in front of you.
Yeah, these are not really the richest people in the world. These are the self-made billionaire poster boys presented as the richest people in the world to perpetuate the idea that consumer capitalism is a merit system. We need to move away from the idea that all money is created equal. Money doesn't really have value. Money just kind of represents value. The thing is, when it comes to calculating how much relative value certain things actually have, the market is kind of mathematically illiterate. Lots of things have incredibly overinflated value. Like, you think the apartment you're renting is actually worth $1.5 million? Come on. Like, this guy owns 9% of Amazon, and according to the market, that means he's worth like $202 billion. But what is Amazon actually worth? What does it get its value from? They produce some things themselves, but mostly they sell and deliver shit produced by other people. They're a middleman service, which means most of their value comes from their infrastructure, which is mostly driven by labor. That's human life. Labor is human beings selling their time and energy, so essentially their life, in exchange for money. Which means that the less your life, your time, your effort, your energy, your labor is worth relative to the market, the more Jeff Bezos, Amazon, and other companies like it are worth relative to the market. Which is done through inflation, right? When the value of money goes down relative to the price of goods and services, that means that the value of labor goes down. Unless people's salary also goes up, which of course it doesn't, which means that people have to work more hours to afford the same goods and services, which means every hour of their life has become less valuable in the eyes of the market. And that's what Jeff Bezos's magnificent pile of wealth is actually made of, right? Primarily, it's a big stack of employment contracts where people are being coerced into selling their labor, selling their time, selling their lives for less than they're actually worth. When you think about it like that, that's a pretty fragile pile, right? That's sensitive to a lot of potential catastrophe. That's essentially always one proper employee strike or one proper consumer strike away from almost total obliteration. Like, do we really believe that that makes you the richest man alive? Do we really believe that that is the most valuable thing that a human being can own? Between them, BlackRock and Vanguard control wealth in the tens of trillions. So whose wealth is that? Well, a lot of it is retirement funds from all over the world. So technically, some of it might be yours. But really, who technically owns the money is frankly less interesting than who has the influence to control it. See, they both own major shares of basically the whole economy, including Apple, Microsoft, Meta, but also including Tesla and including Amazon. But also, they both own shares of each other, and they both own shares of all the major banks, and all the major banks own shares of them. It's a giant, intricate, circular web of money weaving in on itself, making it impossible to tell who's actually in charge. But it is quite evident that somebody is using this wealth to manipulate the political and economic state of the world according to a quite specific agenda. Somebody definitely has their hand on the scale here, but I don't think you're supposed to be able to figure out who. They have a marked impact on the way the economy is managed. Larry Fink of BlackRock was basically put in charge of handling the bailouts in 2008, despite BlackRock being heavily invested in the banks that were being bailed out, despite Larry Fink having a personal hand in creating the subprime mortgage crisis that led to the crash in the first place. They deliberately influenced the narrative in entertainment, the narrative in media, the narrative in marketing. They have a direct hand in the information that you have access to, but also how it is presented to you. So when we're talking about who actually are the wealthiest people in the world, and we think from the perspective of someone who controls the institutions, that controls the narrative, that controls the way humanity interprets reality, and we're talking about people who influence the institutions, that control the institutions, that control and circulate the supply of money itself, what does wealth mean from that perspective? Is it really who has the biggest pile of money? Does that make sense? If I was a person like that, somebody with the power to leverage your own retirement fund against you, I'd probably make sure to invest some of my power into making sure you had no idea who I was, and some of my power into making sure you had some faces to associate with the idea of wealth and power that weren't mine.
I was in the ER in Nasser Hospital, and I saw a young lady. She's in her late 20s. She was literally pacing from one side of the ER to the other. She would stay in one side of the ER for about 2-3 minutes, and then she would literally pace quickly to the other side. And it turns out that this lady, she's a mother of two. Her two daughters, one is 6 and one is 9 or 10, I believe. One daughter has significant shrapnel came to her face, destroying half of her face. And the ER staff said, you know what? She's beyond any resuscitation effort. We will let her just pass away. Yet she was still breathing. She was still grasping for air. So they put her on one side of the ER where they let all the little kids die peacefully, quote unquote, peacefully. On the other end of the ER, it was her other daughter who has both legs amputated, and she was actively bleeding from both legs. So this young mother, she was torn physically and mentally. She was racing from one side of the ER to say goodbye to her daughter, going to the other side of the ER to put some pressure on the other daughter who is actively bleeding from both amputated legs. So this is the kind of chaos that we get after each one of those attacks. And again, the focus usually in the media is about the one who died, and no disrespect to them, that's really tragedy. But my heart as a surgeon or as a physician goes to the injured, mostly pediatric injuries that happen around those severity or around those casualties.
That's that. Okay, now you're going to be seeing another video where I was and explaining all the things that happened during that time, and I will show you videos of that time. But again, this is also for all of y'all, not just myself and our community here to bear witness, but everyone cannot just say, oh, I didn't know, okay? My point of this channel is for educational purposes as well, and also critical thinking. I want you guys to think for yourselves, okay? And have your own thoughts. That's the whole point of building a new world, a new different thing. And you will understand this as you decolonize more. Most of us get this like resilience and confidence and stuff like that, which by the way takes a lot of work to prepare and get all emotionally and spiritually, and also dealing with your own stuff in the background to come here to do this stuff. I want to remind you again, we are pro-Palestinian, are not compensated like Zionist, pro-Israel, and all these genocidal maniacs and disgusting people puppets are paid to do. There's no influencer campaign to try to advocate against genocide and butchering children, killing women, and like all that we're showing here is for the fact that it's the truth in your face for a lot of y'all to wake up and not tell me or anyone. This is basically so when we go in the streets and people start attacking you for no reason, which by the way, recently I was attacked in a funeral, but not because of any of this. because of being a psychic medium. But that will be a story that I will let you guys know on the podcast, on your Story Model podcast, okay? Make sure you follow, like, also there, because I also see that repression of content there as well. Anyways, my point is here is to continue liking, sharing, and continue supporting eSIMs. Continue to follow me on Telegram as well. To follow all the news in Telegram. Most of the stuff here as well, you can do it too. We are just creating creative ways of how to reveal the truth as humanly possible can be consumed, because some of the stuff this is most of the days that it takes me days to come here, because I'm grieving and processing the emotions, and but I know that I have to do it fast because they don't have time to grieve. They don't have time to do any of that, right? But also we have things that I do behind the scenes where if I'm not here and stuff like that is because I'm either with kids or family or things that are happening, right? But at the same time, it's like I have to be here. So please follow me on Instagram. I'm most of the time there, okay? Whenever I'm on break or have bathroom or anything, okay? TikTok as well, okay? And continue supporting and supporting all the content creators there as well. You can follow the people that I follow on Instagram, most of the people, and also on TikTok as well. It's all about pro-Palestinian liberation, and not just Palestinians, it's the Congo, the Sudan, it's all of them. Like, we cannot continue this. It's up to us. And I know that a lot of people feel like, oh, that's so much work. Absolutely, but it's not that much work if we're all together in this. If we're all together in this. And this is also the message that the second video is going to be, is that someone is actually doing this. And there's people created a complete, like similar to what's going on, but it's focused on a specific person, right? Very interesting, but we'll talk about that. But either way, this is the video that is coming next for you guys to see. Yeah.
Hey y'all, I hope you're doing well. So today is my birthday, and I have so much that I want to show you guys here, and I'm trying to get myself together because yesterday even I had to constantly, like, after getting all the information that I needed to get and got confirmation from Holy Spirit, my beautiful God, Jesus, letting me know that this needs to be done, but at my own pace. And then the whole, continuing to do what we got to do in the background, right? But I feel like a lot of the videos that I will show here will show more of what I'm trying to come across. But the one thing that I really wish, and we should definitely start talking more about it, or you do your research, please don't buy the iPhone 16. Please, please, please. That's my wish for this birthday. But also, please share content of Palestine and don't stop talking about Palestine. Don't stop talking about Sudan, okay? Please. Nothing more will make me more happier and will give me the best gift ever than to see Apple revenue for this iPhone 16 monstrosity. And you guys know now how, this phone too. Like, please, please, please. I'm going to add, there's some videos also here, how to help the Congolese, okay? I'm going to show you other videos where we can help out, all their information as well in this video. But this one is definitely, you need to hear.
Palestine will never be free while Congo isn't, so you can be as anti-black as you want, but it's never going to get you anywhere. Israel and its billionaires have a long history of involvement in Congo. Now, in 2009, Glencore, the world's biggest mining company, secretly gave Dan Gertler, who is an Israeli billionaire, $45 million so that he would secure mining deals with Congo on their behalf. Congo is the most mineral-rich country in the world. A lot of the tech used for these weapons couldn't operate without the minerals sourced in Congo. Now, Gertler comes from one of Israel's biggest diamond trading families, so this isn't out of the blue. Now, 1997, Gertler goes to Congo. He strikes a deal with Kabila, who is Congo's president at the time and corrupt and brutal ruler. He gives Kabila 20 million so that Kabila can buy the weapons needed to basically unalive Congolese people, further consolidate his power in Congo. Now, in exchange for this 20 million, 𝓂𝓃 gained a monopoly on Congo's mines. This was labelled a disaster by literally everyone, including the UN. 𝓂𝓃 continues building these ties with these corrupt presidents, which is why it's not a surprise that in 2009 Glencore went to him to get a deal for Congo's mines. And Glencore's not the only one. He has done this in dozens of other instances with other companies. So yes, as much as it's important to boycott Starbucks, to boycott McDonald's, it is companies like Glencore, these big tech companies that we are telling you about, that are invading Congo, that Israeli billionaires get the bulk of their money from. It is the arms trade, it is the diamonds trade, it's the minerals trades that keep them on top. So as long as these Israeli billionaires have a hold on Congo, they have a hold on Palestine.
The Democratic Republic of Congo is home to 70% of the world's cobalt. But what exactly is cobalt, and how are you and I complicit in what is happening in Congo? A battery is made up of different sections, but within that battery there are two current collectors, a positive and a negative. And the cobalt is found in the positive part of the lithium-ion battery. Now we know as the world is moving to a more green space, as a more clean space, and moving away from fossil fuels to help the environment, we also have to understand that cobalt is one of the main ingredients in these rechargeable batteries. And because of that, and because it's found, 70% is found in the Democratic Republic of Congo, it has created a system of exploitation, has created a system of displacement, has created a system of poverty because of the need of cobalt. Because of this growing need, currently there have been at least 6.5 million people displaced in the eastern part of the Congo, 25.4 million people in need, and children as young as 6 years old, 40,000 children that is reported to be working underage child labor in the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo, just so that you and I can have our electronics and our electric vehicles and move to a more green space. Because Congo is rich in its minerals such as cobalt, coltan, magnesium, nickel, but specifically more cobalt. Back in 2019, there was a report done that the global production, 70% of the global production of cobalt, like I said, has been found in the Democratic Republic of Congo in their eastern region. That breaks down to 128,700 tons. So as the need begins to grow, it is documented by 2035, there will be a critical need, need for us to continue to have more supply, such as for coltan, cobalt, magnesium, etc. The Energy Act of 2020 defines a critical material as any non-fuel mineral, element, or substance or material that the Secretary of Energy determines as a high risk of supply chain disruption, serves an essential function in one or more energy technologies, including technologies that produce, transmit, store, and conserve energy. And what that means pretty much is that we need more of this so that we can keep up with the demand of technology. We can keep up with the demand of electric vehicles and how that is moving us toward a new green space. 2035, it is said that the mineral cobalt will be in such a need that we would need to continue to produce to keep up with the demand of more technology, of more electric vehicles and all of that. So as we continue to see this push for more green space, a push for this, we have to understand that the critical need of cobalt, coltan, magnesium, nickel, but specifically cobalt, comes from the Democratic Republic of Congo. And these minings and these artisanal miners are paying the price so that we can continue to move forward in our green space, in our clean space. Earlier, there has been record and documented at least 40,000 children working in these mines as young as 8 years old, earning $2.15 a day. And so as we see these numbers, as we see what is happening, and to be honest with you, they're not just numbers. They are human beings. They are children. There are people being displaced just for the greed and just for the continual production and the continual need and the critical mineral that we need to continue to move forward here in the West and throughout the world. So let's continue to fight for the Congolese people. Let's continue to bring awareness, and let's continue to shift and mobilize and organize to see how we can move forward and how we can actually do things differently, because you and I going green, you and I moving away and becoming clean energy and all these different things is at the price and the back of a child in the Democratic Republic of Congo. They deserve better because they are being exploited of what is happening. And what is happening in Democratic Republic of Congo is a structured genocide.
They came, they conquered, and they wrote. Now you don't expect people who came to invade us to write the truth about us. They will always write negative things about us. And they have to do that because they have to justify their invasion. We don't write our history. It has always been handed down to us orally by our elders. Of course, the white man came and he writes history. In fact, you don't know anything about any place until the white man gets there. Until the white man comes to any place, nothing lives. It's only when he comes and says, "Boof, I've discovered you, now you exist," which is ridiculous.
You could be partnered, you could be married, you could be single, and it still wouldn't protect you from patriarchal violence in this world as a woman. Every day it is harrowing waking up in this world, not knowing if the men we date might light us on fire after we compete in the Olympics. Or the man we marry after 50 years might solicit 70 plus strangers to assault us after they drug us up so bad we hardly notice. Or our homes could be broken into by a neighbor and we'd be beaten over the head and assaulted so badly that we are near death. Or we can choose to focus on our careers like the young Indian doctor who was asleep in the same hospital that she worked in and was assaulted so brutally by 30 plus men that she died a horrific death. This is the earth that women have to live on and share with men like that. And no one takes misogyny seriously in its small and innocuous forms. But every day women have to wonder and question if the men we choose to love and deal with will lead to our end.
What's happening in the Democratic Republic of Congo is an ongoing genocide. And what I mean by that is, as we see the continual slaughter of Congolese people and the continual displacement of Congolese people, we have to ask ourselves who is benefiting from this and why they are benefiting from it. Congolese people are being exploited for their natural mineral resources, such as coltan, cobalt, copper, and so many other mineral resources. Understanding that the Congo is rich, it is not poor, but because of the exploitation of Western interests, because of the exploitation of Belgium of the past, because of the exploitation and the horrific violence of King Leopold, the Congolese people of today are suffering from it. They are not seeing the richness of their land. Now, they may see it with their eyes, they may see it with their bodies, and they may understand the land, but understand it as these Chinese companies come in and continue to extract from the land, to take from the land. The Congolese people are suffering. It is not being told on global news or global scale. Understanding that the reason why that there's no information coming out of the Congo is because they want to keep you in the dark. They want to keep you from knowing what is actually happening. Because what we understand is that these big corporations, the big mining companies are taking and extracting and exploiting the land. Therefore, driving out 6 million people. Therefore, people are dying in the mines. People are being forced to displacement based upon these money-hungry, greedy corporations. What's going on in the Congo needs our attention. It needs to have the same fervor. It needs to have the same sort of a passion to liberate Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo, because you and I benefit from it. You and I benefit from it in the West and on the global scale. So continue to fight for a free Congo. Continue to learn and educate yourself. Continue to follow journalists like myself and others who are reporting about the Congo in the ethical, truthful, factual matter. Because at the end of the day, we are all benefiting from the Congo, and understanding that whatever that we need, whatever that is happening, they do not deserve to be in constant oppression, in constant of the lower end of the scale. So understanding what is happening, understanding that free Congo shouldn't just be a slogan or shouldn't just be a hashtag, but it should be in our daily lives. And us in the West and us in the global scale, if our comfort comes at the price of someone else's life, body, and oppression, is it really comfort or is it just chains?
So billions of dollars in revenue from the sale of Congo's cobalt to companies like Tesla are being used to build illegal settlements in the West Bank. Israeli billionaire Dan Gutler, who obtained Congolese cobalt mines through illegal and corrupt means, then sold those cobalt mines to an Anglo-Swiss mining giant known as Glencore. Glencore, in turn, has a deal with Tesla to provide Tesla the cobalt that it needs to produce its electric vehicles. And so you see, Tesla is paying Dan Gutler directly because Dan Gutler receives $250,000 in royalties per day from the sale of this cobalt to companies like Tesla. And this is in a country where more than 60% of the population lives in abject poverty. Dan Gutler invests that money, those royalties, in 2 Canadian-registered construction companies that are involved in building illegal settlements in the West Bank. Dan Gutler is currently under U.S. sanctions, but the Biden administration wants to lift these sanctions because of its irrational push towards the green energy transition, spearheaded by companies like Tesla. And so you see, these billionaire CEOs, these corporations are the policymakers. These corporations hold enormous power and influence in our governments, and that is something we have to realize before we start saying that boycotts don't work. Free Congo.
There are so many ways that you can help support the Democratic Republic of Congo. Number 1, buy refurbished electronics and decrease the demand for conflict minerals and artisanal mining. 2, support on-the-ground organizations in the DRC like Focus Congo, Goma Pendo, Go Forward Unity Sphere, and Belav. 3, invest in sustainable solutions. Support mutual aid initiatives that aim to empower and improve the lives of Congolese people. 4, get loud. Continue to bring awareness to the ongoing humanitarian crises that are destroying the DRC and hold external governments accountable who perpetuate these crises. And don't forget government incentivized multinational corporation complicity. We have the power to make a difference. Because right now, there is a person out there who is asking themselves, how does one person make a difference? While not knowing that millions of others are asking the same question.
Africa is the richest place on earth. They are not poor in terms of wealth in resources, which is what the value of money represents. This is the wealthiest place. Now, there's a lot of people here living in abject poverty, particularly the people who live in the resource wealthiest regions, such as the people in the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is arguably the richest country on earth in terms of resources per capita. That means that other people than the people from these countries are enjoying the benefits of the wealth generated from the resources that belong to the people from these countries. The current popular narrative is to try and blame this exploitation entirely on corrupt African leaders and end the conversation there. But given the uncontrovertible fact that the entities benefiting the most from this corruption are giant multinational corporations, primarily North American ones, European ones, Chinese ones, and Indian ones, but not exclusively, believing that those entities are not actively engaged in installing and maintaining the power of those corrupt leaders is a silly thing to think. That is a silly, silly position. But trying to end the conversation there is also a silly position. See, this corruption is made profitable through mass consumption, which means that the driving force, the fuel that keeps the engine of corruption and theft and greed and slavery and exploitation running, is the consumer. That's us, which means we actually have the power to do something about it, and all we have to do is limit our consumption. And it should be noted that since those giant multinational corporations are also the source of most of the corruption and exploitation in our own countries, acting to do something about it is not just an act of charity, it's an act of self-preservation. And you don't even have to do more, you have to do less. Buy less stuff. If you do buy stuff, buy local. If you don't buy local, buy second hand. If you're not buying second hand, purchase quality so it doesn't fall apart immediately and you have to buy more again. Stop buying fast fashion. Stop buying flimsy electronics. Stop buying the new product that's just like the old product because you think it gives you some sort of social status. Punish planned obsolescence. Punish exploitation. Punish corruption. You don't have to march. You don't have to vote or not vote. You don't have to put on a mask and throw a brick. We can cut this giant off at the knees, and all we have to do is stop feeding it.
So there's actually this really cool update on the iPhone 16 that I don't see a lot of people talking about. So when you download Safari or Google Chrome or whatever internet browser, you can still find photos like this. or this, or even this. And you can still find sources like this. Isn't that really cool? Although there is one thing that's still missing. That is, they still haven't made the phone come in the color red, like the blood of the Congolese men, women, and children that are being exploited to mine for the parts to make these phones. So yeah, maybe you want to think about that before you go to the Apple Store.
Namely, that the third world is not poor. You don't go to poor countries to make money. There are very few poor countries in this world. Most countries are rich. The Philippines are rich. Brazil is rich. Mexico is rich. Chile is rich. Only the people are poor. But there's billions to be made there, to be carved out and to be taken. There's been billions for 400 years. The capitalist European and North American powers have carved out and taken the timber, the flax, the hemp, the cocoa, the rum, the tin, the copper, the iron, the rubber, the bauxite, the slaves, and the cheap labor. They have taken out of these countries. These countries are not underdeveloped, they're overexploited.
What's the difference between capitalism and socialism? It all has to do with the concept of private property. But private property doesn't mean your toothbrush or your iPhone. These are personal property, things you own to use personally. Private property are things you own so that others can't use them unless they pay you a little bit of rent first. One example of private property is a factory a business owner owns but doesn't work in. Instead, he takes profits from the people who work in his factory. Another example of private property is a house or apartment that a landlord owns but doesn't live in. Instead, they charge a tenant rent every month to live there. The capital in capitalism refers to this type of private property. Owning this private property generates income for the capitalist without any work necessary. And that's the problem with capitalism that makes it unsustainable. The people who own the most capital are able to afford to hoard more of it. That's why after each generation in the United States, it becomes more difficult and more unlikely for people to own their own homes and businesses. They have to compete with the people who already own plenty of them. Under capitalism, we admit defeat and say if someone isn't managing this with pure greed as their motive, then it can't be done. Socialism is the system that moves us away from that defeatism and into the future. Under socialism, we explore other ownership models, like workers owning the factory they work in, tenants coming together and managing their own housing. A town can publicly own their rivers and other natural resources to manage them sustainably. Privately owned industries that have a history of corrupting our politicians, like how the fossil fuel industry has a profit motive to pollute, or how the weapons manufacturing industry has a profit motive to go to war. These industries can be publicly owned and managed for the collective good.
The unrelenting horror of what's happening in Palestine, hundreds of people getting killed in strikes, Palestinian prisoners being tortured and raped, does not even register on our politicians' faces when it is brought up. Politicians only care about the consolidation of their own power, and power concedes nothing without demand. That is why when people go to a rally and interrupt Kamala Harris and she goes, "Do you want Trump to win?" It's like, well, what the fuck is the functional difference of Trump and you if that's your reaction to what's happening, right? These are US-made missiles killing people with our tax dollars, right? There is nothing more salient than this issue in the United States right now. We have to decide who we are as a country. If this can stand, then they can do literally whatever they want to us, right? And everything that people are worried about that's going to happen, the loss of civil liberties, is going to happen anyway under Kamala Harris, because she only cares about herself. That is the uniting principle of politicians, is that's what they care about. That's who they are. And that's what you see when people, you know, which is why I'm going to the DNC, right? I'm going to go to the DNC later this month and I'm going to protest. Will it do anything? Probably not. But it is the morally correct thing to do. You don't fight fascism because you're going to win. You fight it because
What do we mean when we say ACAB? We mean that the history of policing is drenched in blood, a history rooted in private slave patrols, union busting, misogyny, and homophobia. The earliest police forces in the US were formed to crush slave rebellions. And when they weren't brutalizing enslaved people, they were turning their violence on women's suffrage, on queer people daring to live freely, and on civil rights and basic human dignity. From serving extractive corporations, dispossessing indigenous populations, policing borders, and brutalizing black communities, queer communities, law enforcement ensures the status quo of a world ever on the brink of calamity. Police act as proxies of colonial and capitalist violence, deepening economic inequalities and reinforcing oppressive class hierarchies that are at the root of the world's suffering. And this isn't just an American legacy of oppression. Israel exports these tactics, training U.S. law enforcement in the same methods that killed George Floyd, enslaved Africans, crushed unions, colonized indigenous lands, and put people in concentration camps. Just as the U.S. was formed by a pan-European alliance of slave masters, today's supremacists form alliances across borders. And when the Klan members weren't hiding behind their hoods, they were out patrolling the streets. Nothing has changed. America has just exported its Klan members to Palestine. We say ACAB for the same reason that we boycott genocidal products. Major corporations like Starbucks, Victoria's Secret, and McDonald's rely on the surplus value of unpaid prison labor, churning out $11 billion in prison-made goods each year. Broken windows policing and the war on drugs aren't about justice. They're about regulating, segregating, disciplining, and incarcerating poor people of color, locking them up for the smallest infractions. It's the difference between a Palestinian child throwing a stone and Israeli tanks demolishing entire cities without consequence. And for the U.S. with the highest incarceration rate in the world, did you really think that slavery ended with the 13th Amendment? My dude, what do you call unpaid prison labor? The unpaid labor of communities of color are just another source of revenue for the likes of Kamala Harris, Trump, or any other neoliberal politician. For the protesters being beaten in the streets of Berlin and every major U.S. city, ACAB isn't just a slogan, it's a survival strategy. It's a common courtesy. ACAB is the bare minimum for liberation. As long as cops enforce the arbitrary laws that uphold these oppressive structures, collective organizing is our only salvation. If you serve this system, you are the system we are fighting to obstruct. So when we say ACAB, we mean fuck Israel, fuck genocide, fuck prison slavery, fuck slave masters, fuck the police. From the river to the sea, free Palestine.
So yeah, nothing will make me more happier than seeing their revenue 50%, because they rely, the 50% of their revenue is from this new technology or whatever. This is why they do this every fucking year, right? And you really don't need an iPhone 16, okay? Buy before, like this phone that I have now, I waited for my other phone to finish until like it was done, and then I gotta use one. You can get used phone. You don't need the latest technology. Honestly, try to reuse the same phone. Like, stop doing that. Stop giving your hard-earned tax money, not more than the one that we're being taken from us from our taxes without our consent, to kill and butcher children, men and women in another country, in multiple countries actually. They're genocide, using our tax money for genocide, right? Recently, I'm not sure, but I'm still looking into it. Apparently, Canada has stopped. That feels like a distraction, so I'm gonna do my own research. You guys should do your own research. I just feel like that's just like a distraction, or trying to be like, yeah, but we're the good guys, but you've been sending bombs before when we told you to stop, and you told us you stop, but you still continue to send bombs to genocide Palestinians. We need to hold this country, Canada, accountable, especially their prime minister, okay? Also, recently, if you guys don't know, but do your research, apparently the embarrassment of this country also, this is why they're kind of like, don't look at us, look at them. There is 900 Nazi members in this country. It was recently released, their names, and everybody's asking, release their name. I think their names and addresses and everything has been released. This is why also the prime minister not only gets paid by the AIPAC, right, but also that's his hiding little secret. And he knows, all the liberals know, that remember that mistake that they made, that they had like one Nazi guy come into their thing, and Then he was like, oh, I'm sorry, he should not be here, blah, blah, blah. No, that was on purpose. That was on purpose. He was trying to see how much he can get away with it. But now it's even more embarrassing because there's 900 Nazis here. And I feel so sad and bad for those who survived the Holocaust and they're here in Canada, they immigrated here. So finding that out, I'm sure they're trying to cover it so people don't know. But I just feel like these people will have their trauma and PTSD and all that coming back. You know what I'm saying? But I feel like that's another, kind of slap in the face for those who are supporting Israel, who are, I call them fake ass Jews, because real Jews don't support genocide, period. After their family survived that, no way. There's no way, okay? So that's how you know who a real Jew and who is not, okay? Real Jews are not okay with what's happening in Palestine. That's how you know, okay? Everybody else is just fake Zionists. Actually, listen to this guy.
As a Jew, you should be more loyal to Israel. Okay, as a Jew, you shouldn't be questioning my commitment to Judaism as another Jew. Okay, that is disrespectful. And you certainly shouldn't be questioning it based on my political beliefs, especially considering that I might say that supporting a genocide is not a very Jewish value, is it? Okay? And I might say that therefore supporting Palestine is in fact a more Jewish cause than supporting Israel. But you don't see me sitting here questioning whether or not you're a Jew because of it. I keep the political conversation political. I'm not applying that shit to your fucking identity. We don't do that. That's a road straight to anti-Semitism. It feeds it. So stop fucking doing that. And I see this shit all the time. I have not personally experienced 1 ounce of anti-Semitism on all the many pro-Palestine protests I've gone to. I have experienced wild amounts of judgment of my Jewish character, my Jewish loyalty, my Jewish identity from other Jews in these pro-Israel circles. It is absurd. It is disgusting and deplorable to sit here and think that because you have one political belief, that you are more Jew than me. Fuck you.
I'm 7 generations in Palestine. Yes, my mother told me. She remember we used to live with the Palestinian neighbors in such a good relationship. We used to babysit each other, the children. In the Jewish holidays, they bring over the children to the Muslim neighbors. In the Muslim ones, they bring over the children to Jewish neighbors. We have no problem. The problem here is not the religion. The problem is occupation, killing, take away the land from people. This is the problem completely. Palestinians don't hate Jews, they hate occupiers. No difference if it's a Jew, if it's a French, it's English, no difference. And we have to bring this to the attention to know the problem is not the religion. The problem is the occupation.
Katie, the American Jewish girl, with a reminder, we are approaching a year of active speeding genocide, on top of 75 prior years at least of slow drip genocide. Israel has been perpetrating a genocide of the Palestinian people in the name of global Jewry since the 1930s, 1940s. When waves of Aliyah prior to 1948 were already displacing Palestinians and making Palestinian families refugees. There is 76 years of scholarship documenting this. This is such a clear example of settler colonization. If you look at global history, it occurred in the context of colonization of that region of the world, immediately following the race for Africa. It established a Western military stronghold surrounded by Arab neighbors. This military stronghold went on to aggress against these neighbors, including, by the way, South Lebanon right now. They are not going to stop at Palestine. And if you are still using your precious and limited energy, your brief time on this earth to justify active genocide, what happened to you? What happened to you? I benefit tangibly and materially from white supremacy as a white person. I'm not going to stand around and justify white supremacy just because it's good for me specifically. It's a violent, egregiously brutal, inexcusable system. And I am confident that my ancestors would not have wanted what happened to them in the 30s and 40s in Eastern Europe to then be done in their name to Palestinians.
Are y'all fucking dumb? They only brought out the Barbie pink iPhone because they knew y'all was boycotting Apple. They only brought back the snack rack because they knew y'all was boycotting McDonald's. They brought out a pink Stanley with Starbucks because they knew y'all was boycotting Starbucks. What the fuck?
My name is Subani King. Subani is an Arabic name from Palestine. I'm originally from North London. I now live in the Slough area. But when I was a teenager, I travelled to Israel, being told that it was a desert that had been turned into the land of milk and honey by Jewish immigrants. I got there and was horrified to hear that I should not speak to Arabs, I shouldn't get in a car with Arabs, they would rape me, murder me, steal my money. And I was shocked because I'd met Arabs in Morocco on a holiday and they weren't like that at all. When I got in the second car, because we were hitchhiking back in the day, I got exactly the same message as if it was form written. And I started to wonder why they were trying to turn me against another people. On the third time of hearing it, I thought I'm going to investigate and find out what is going on. I ended up staying in Palestine. I married a Palestinian Christian. I have 2 Palestinian daughters that were born in Palestine. And I lived there for 10 years and saw the apartheid as it was then, which is nothing compared to the atrocities and the apartheid that is going on now. And so for all those years ever since, I have been fighting this campaign. When we first moved back as a family, my children went to school and were asked, where are you from? And they said Palestine. And people said, do you mean Pakistan? People had never even heard of Palestine. So look how far we've come. Now everybody knows the word Palestine, and I will keep on until my dying breath telling everybody why we need to support Palestine. It's the longest going injustice of our times.
If you could summarize the history, in a minute, what actually happened? Is it Palestinian land? Is it Israeli land?
Okay, well, if you believe that anyone can claim a land from 2,000 years ago, I pity you, because if that's the case, most of us living in most of the world don't belong where we actually are and could all be kicked out. So that isn't a claim. If you listen to the Orthodox Jews, they also say that they are not supposed to have a land, that God didn't want them there. They're supposed to be dispersed throughout the whole world. So there's 2 reasons why Jews in Palestine was never a reason for them to go there. The whole thing was never about a Jewish homeland. It was always about a colonialist state. And the reason it was needed, as we've heard from Joe Biden fairly recently, if there was no Israel, we would have to create one. It's because it serves the interests of America and the West to have somebody there like a 51st state that they can control, which is why they support Israel completely, financially, with arms, and allow them total impunity in every violation of international law.
Our people in Gaza are not just suffering from bombings and massacres, they're suffering even more from the betrayal and silence of those who are supposed to protect them, from the Arab leaders and Muslims who've forgotten their duty and chased after the hayat-dunya, this worldly life. Those who are supposed to stand for justice are silent. How will they face Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? We must act and support the truth, because Allah says He's not going to change the condition of the people until they change what is within themselves. Silence at a time like this is betrayal. Allah says, and fear a trial which will not strike only the wrongdoers amongst you, but also those who remain silent. On the day of judgment, you're going to be asked, what did you do when Gaza was crying out for help?
Have you noticed how Zionists love to criticize peaceful Palestinian protesters for wearing masks? Show your face, so we can identify you and work tirelessly to destroy your professional and personal lives. Because you have the audacity to be against Israel's well-documented war crimes, but are conveniently silent about terrorist Israeli settlers wearing masks when they violently harass, attack, and kill innocent Palestinian civilians in the West Bank in an effort to ethnically cleanse them from the land? According to Zionists, masks are bad if they're worn to stand up to oppression, but if you're the source of oppression, by all means! Some would call that hypocrisy, but all should recognize it as a tenet of Zionism. Free Palestine!
Anybody who supports the actions of Israel, in my opinion, is a scary person. And to me, my mind goes to, you're capable of eating human meat. That's how I see it. Like, I think that you're so checked out of your humanity that I cannot appeal to your humanity by arguing with you, because the humanity is not there anymore. For me to try to argue you out of this harmful mindset you have, there needs to be an element of humanity left in you for you to even engage with that level of empathy. It's not there. And I don't want to know what else you're capable of. And I'm going to try and understand how you got to that rubbish. so that I can see how your mind works and I can make a decision on the spot on whether or not you're even worth seeing again. And I do think that should be an ick. If the person you're engaging with is actively against standing with Palestinian people, that's an ick. That's an ick. Because that to me is scary.
Gaza is not only an open-air prison, but a graveyard. The weapons they're using are not only evaporating people instantly, but causing them to decay through the chemicals and heavy metals they contain. The land we walk on, the air we breathe, the chemicals we eat, and the water we drink, all of it are killing us, and we have no other option. These materials and heavy metals can cause a plethora of complications ranging from up to the brain down to the offspring. We're seeing children born with congenital deformities, children that died in the ICU due to having some unknown disease causing respiratory failure due to breathing the dust of the house rubbles. And this is not an isolated story. There is a lot of these cases. The health workers in Gaza are witnessing children deteriorating into organ failure. The lungs, livers, hearts and brains stop functioning all of a sudden. In a short time, they die with nothing to do about it. For how long are we going to be content with the died of unknown disease, or the same for organisms that have been killing people even back to the Iraq War? This isn't new. Multi-drug resistance has been documented back to the World War I. And this is what war does best, killing people in multiple ways. And innocents, of course, are the victims.
This is one of the most disturbing things I've read. The Israeli military has been sodomizing Palestinians, and they are trying to figure out if that's an okay thing to do. The Israeli military has used these sexual assault claims on October 7th to say that Palestinians are animals. The story became so big that Sheryl Sandberg, the chief executive officer at Google at the time, made a documentary about it. She spoke out saying that rape should never be used as an act of war. And this news hit almost every single media outlet. Now Israel is literally using it as an act of war and trying to terrorize the Palestinians with it. With Israeli politicians asking if it's okay to stick a broom in someone's anus, and responding with everything is legitimate to do to them if they are Nakba, which is them saying if they are Hamas, then it's okay. But they consider everyone Hamas. They consider women, children, elderly people, all part of Hamas. They called college kids in the US part of Hamas. Sheryl Sandberg, the one who created the documentary, said silence is complicity. So I am looking forward to her being so vocal about what's happening in Israel.
I hope that you never have to worry about this happening to your father or grandfather. We live in a world where this is possible, where this is happening. And honestly, do you think that you're that different? You think these fascists won't come for you and your descendants eventually? Free Palestine.
The gag I feel like everybody is missing is that anyone who's okay with slaughtering children for their political ambitions is okay with killing you too for their political ambitions. I think people mistakenly believe they're special because they're attached to a particular country, or because they think they follow the laws, or for any myriad of reasons they think that they're an exception. And the reality is that anyone who is okay with killing children for profit or for political ambitions is okay with killing you too. So, as far as I am concerned, both of the parties, both of the people are okay with my death. And I'm not okay with that.
Okay. Okay. That's how you know. Okay. Please use your discernment. Okay. You gotta, it's not really your job. That's the job of the Jewish people to identify who's Zionist, anti-Zionist, but it's not just them, all of us. Because they're all liars, that's their main thing, manipulative, controlling, okay, and psychopathic, genocidal maniacs, okay? So fuck that. Also, they're obsessed with, like, they believe their own delusions, right? Their lies, okay? So that's another thing. They retaliate and project, you know, who they already are and what they're already doing, okay? So get ready for that, the gaslighting and the bullshit kakalaka, because they don't want to face their mirror that they're the people who they're supporting, who they're like, oh yeah, our land, promised land, from stolen children and butchering kids and stuff like that. Like, these people are insane. Like, 11 months of this and you still think acting like a victim? Please, please. And those who supporting this, you still think it's self-defense? You still think it's self-defense? There's no hope. You guys already did, like, for real.
The watermelon wasn't always an anti-black racist trope in the US. It originally had a different meaning. Similar to the symbolism of the watermelon in the Palestinian movement for liberation, it represented the freedom and emancipation of black people from slavery. But that didn't last, because any attempt at black self-determination and independence was met with opposition and violence. This is a story of the fragility of supremacy, and to tell it, we need to go back in time to the end of the American Civil War. Following emancipation and the end of slavery in the US in the 1860s, many Southern African Americans refused to work or sharecrop on white-owned farms. They began cultivating their own land. Many grew and sold watermelons and started to develop their own economic and financial independence. The fruit became a material symbol of their freedom. This independence infuriated Southern white people because it threatened their racial order. Remember, a large part of their ideology was that black people were not ready for freedom, and that was being proven wrong, aided and abetted by watermelon. This is when they decided to unleash their insidious plan. They wanted to take this image of freedom and destroy it. So they decided to weaponize the watermelon into an ugly stereotype. Through a deliberate and elaborate narrative, they aimed to reinforce the idea that black people were lesser than and inherently incapable of being independent human beings. And it went as follows. 1. Black people were lazy. This was represented by how easy it was to grow watermelons because they didn't require much work. The stereotype was further reinforced by the image that because watermelons were hard to eat, black people would be consumed with eating them rather than doing any work at all. 2. Black people were unclean. This was shown through exaggerated depictions of how messy it is to eat a watermelon. The subtext behind this was purity of race, and that this one was not pure. 3. That black people are childlike, with the implication that they needed overseers or masters. This was shown by suggesting that a watermelon was a fruit only a child would like, because it is sweet, colorful, and devoid of much nutritional value. This narrative, fueled by these racist stereotypes, blew up and really took off in the 1900s. It was part of the popular culture and showed up in songs, minstrels, posters, postcards, books, TV shows, and films. It persists to this day. Even the first black president was a target of it. Cultural symbols have immense power to shape how we see the world and the people in it. That's why stories and narratives matter. They took what was once a symbol of freedom and turned it into a stereotype to reinforce racial supremacy and hierarchy while completely erasing its history. Because how fragile do you have to be to feel threatened by seeing other people enjoying their newfound freedom, living off land they owned, and becoming financially independent by selling watermelon? The answer is very threatened. As Palestinians, we have also adopted the watermelon as a symbol of our own struggle for freedom, because its colors match our flag that was banned by Israel. Their fragility is triggered from their drive to erase Palestinians and replace the native with the settler. So any sign or symbol of our identity or presence becomes an existential threat to them and their ideology. So instead of carrying the flag, people started carrying watermelons, and now it's everywhere. The watermelon is only one of many connections between the black and Palestinian liberation struggles. Solidarity that goes back decades as they fight similar forces. Remember, we are not free until we are all free. My name is Salim, and I tell stories that connect the unexpected. Follow for more and support our work on Patreon.
When Israeli forces finally withdrew from Jenin, they left behind a trail of destruction, fear, and loss. Something many in Jenin are familiar with, surviving one raid after another.
I was 9 years old and I clearly remember the 2002 siege of the camp. But this raid was even harder for me now that I am a mom and I have a child to protect.
Zikrayat says she hoped her daughter would grow up to see a better life. But instead of preparing for the beginning of the school year, Ilya is looking at her camp and city in ruins. She says she wants to be a journalist and asks us to use the microphone. Her face tells more than her words.
Look at the destruction. They're not letting us be. They have no mercy, no mercy.
Zikrayat wanted her daughter to stay at home, but she refused. She can relate. When she was that age, Israeli forces demolished hundreds of homes in the camp. But every time Zikrayat tried to leave Jenin, she tells us she was drawn back.
Despite the damage and destruction, we love our camp. Look how they're destroying everything. Mice are everywhere now. Even sewage is flowing in our streets, but we won't leave.
Zikrayat and her family returned to their home despite the fear of another raid. To live here, Palestinians are faced with a tough choice. To stay and risk another Israeli assault, or to leave everything they've ever known. A choice that is getting more difficult by the day. For now, though, people say they're not going anywhere. Nida Ibrahim, Al Jazeera, Jenin, Palestine.
My name is Jonathan Pollack. I was there when she was shot. We got to Beta for the weekly demonstration against the settlement there. The army was already present where people pray in protest of the settlement. As soon as the prayer ended, clashes ensued, and the army shot tear gas and live ammunition immediately. We were forced to retreat down towards the village and ended up standing at the outskirts of the built-up area of the village, about 150, 200 meters away from where the soldiers were. We stayed there for about half an hour. Soldiers at some point took over a rooftop that has a view of the entire area, including where we were. It was quiet. There was nothing to justify the shot. The shot was taken to kill. There were 2 shots fired from the rooftop. I've been doing this for 20 years. I know the difference in sound between tear gas, rubber-coated bullets, live ammunition. These were 2 separate shots of live ammunition, shot one after the other. The first one hit a metal object, and then a young man from the village in his thigh. And then I heard another shot. And then I heard people calling my name in English, saying, we need help, come help us. I ran over there about 10 or 15 meters behind me, farther away from the soldiers, into the olive groves. I found her lying on the ground beside the tree, bleeding from her head. I put my hand under her head to try and stop the bleeding. I took her pulse. She had a very weak pulse. We called the ambulance. From there, we evacuated her to the village's medical center, where the doctor came into the ambulance and continued into the hospital, where they tried to resuscitate her, but failed.
Something very sick and evil is happening in Israel's jails, and almost nobody is talking about it. Israel is running, and let's be absolutely explicit about this, a system of torture camps. Welcome to hell is not an exaggeration. 9 Israeli reservists sodomize by inserting metal objects up the anus of the prisoner and causing terrible internal injuries.
This is leaked CCTV video
of what Israeli military police allege is a detainee being sodomized as he's hidden from the view of security cameras by riot shields.
They were arrested, taken away to a detention center where there was an enormous outcry. And there was actually an invasion of the detention center, including politicians, in support of the Israeli soldiers.
שיש מי שבפרקליטות חושב שאפשר לבוא ולעצור חיילים על דברים שעושים למחבלי נוח'בה, לא נגמר. אנחנו לא יכולים להמשיך כרגיל.
להכניס מקל לרקטום של בן אדם, זה לגיטימי?
כן, אם הוא נוח'בה, הכל לגיטימי לעשות לו. הכל! הכל!
In Israel, the reaction is it right to sodomize prisoners? This conversation went on breakfast television. It's sort of their equivalent in Israel of GMTV.
מבצעים עבירה, חשודים בעבירה של אינוס, בעצור כפות. זה לא מעניין אותך?
בגדול, עוד פעם, זה מעניין לי את העכוז מה עשו לאיש חמאס הזה. אני כל הזמן זוכר, קודם כל, הדבר היחיד שמבחינתי הוא בעיה פה, זה שזו לא איזושהי מדיניות מוסדרת של המדינה להתעלל בעצירים. כי בגדול, זה גם, קודם כל מגיע להם, וזה אחלה נקמה שאנחנו צריכים לתת להם. ודבר שני, אולי זה גם ישמש אותנו קצת יותר כהרתעה.
So you have Israeli TV pundits discussing the merits of allowing Palestinian prisoners to be raped. Many members of the cabinet are justifying it. Take the example of the Israeli energy minister, Eli Cohen. Reservists who do holy work and guard the despicable Hamas. Itamar Ben-Gvir, who is the security minister, went even further.
Take your hands off our reservists. Like it is in the prison service, so it is in the IDF. Our fighters deserves full support.
This tells you that something has gone wrong, but it also tells you that something's gone wrong with us. Haven't we heard a word of condemnation from the British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer? I haven't heard it. Nothing from Rishi Sunak, who promised Netanyahu his unequivocal support. Nothing from the Shadow Foreign Secretary, Andrew Mitchell. Nothing from Britain's Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, who famously said on no evidence at all that Hamas had raped babies.
1,300 people dead, murdered, babies, raped.
And yet he has not yet said one word of condemnation of the treatment of Palestinians in these, what can only be called torture camps run by the Israeli state. And I think that means that we accept them. Imagine how we'd be reacting if this was emerging about Putin treating Ukrainian prisoners. You can imagine the frenzy of outrage. You don't get it when it's committed by our ally, Israel. And I think that shows that we have done the same as the Israelis. We cannot see Palestinians as human beings. To behave in this bestial way towards Palestinians is not regarded by the British media as disgusting and foul and inhumane. It's just, to use that code word, it's been normalized not just in Israel, but in Britain as well. Imagine we learnt, the British people tomorrow morning picked up the papers and discovered that prison officers had been systematically sodomizing inmates in His Majesty's prisons. It would be a national outcry. There would be a sense of utter horror. You know, you get the Sunday Times investigation team would be in there. The Sun would be having a screaming headlines sort of denouncing the way that it was being handled. The Prime Minister would have to come on and justify or denounce it. There'd be questions in the House of Commons. You can imagine the near total silence by the Western media. Those Western papers actually invented stories about what was happening on October the 7th. Papers which went along with the fabrications by Israeli sources, 40 beheaded babies, mass rapes, etc. on October the 7th. At the same time, they downplayed or scarcely reported these horrifying reports of sheer barbarity committed by Israel against Palestinian prisoners. I am puzzled that there's been so little Western reporting of this. You've had the United Nations report, which says that quite a number of these prisoners have died because they're beaten to death or just left to die. B'Tselem, which is the leading Israeli human rights group, published a devastating report based on the interviews with 50 or more prisoners, which make completely unbearable reading. If you are a Palestinian prisoner in one of these jails, very likely you haven't been charged with any criminal or other offense. You're going to be randomly beaten, tortured. You may be sodomized, normally by metal objects. Internal organs have been smashed up, and as a result, there are 9,500 Palestinians held in Israeli jails, approximately 200 of whom are children.
I was part of the human rights vetting process for arms going to Israel, and a charity called Defense of Children International Palestine drew our attention at the State Department to the sexual assault, actually the rape, of a 13-year-old boy that occurred in an Israeli prison in the Mosque Bia in Jerusalem. We examined these allegations. We believed they were credible. We put them to the government of Israel. And you know what happened the next day? The IDF went into the DCIP offices and removed all their computers and declared them a terrorist entity.
This is nothing new. It's been going on for a very long time, probably to the origins of the Israeli state, and then with venomous intensity ever since October the 7th. In July, I was in Jerusalem and saw this awful tape of a man, Muaz Aziz, coming out of the Negev jail in South Israel. And he was clearly unable to walk unaided. His right arm was stuck out in front of him, looked broken. I asked our bureau chief in Jerusalem if we could go and interview him, and she did. She sorted that out, and we went together. He'd never been charged with anything. I think this is very important. Nobody had accused him of a crime. He has a pregnant wife and 4 children. They came in, they smashed everything up, took him away, and basically he went through 9 months of beatings.
ينهال عليك بأجهزة التفتيش التي يفتش به الجسد، ينهال عليك بالضرب على الأعضاء التناسلية، بالضرب المبرح وأنت عارية، ينهال على الأسير وهو عاري بهروات حديدية وبأجهزة التفتيش على الأعضاء التناسلية ضربا.
In a nearby cell, somebody was beaten to death and left to die. He said, the prison is still in my head. He was so traumatized by this experience. The other thing he said was that every other prisoner is getting the same treatment. The beatings, the torture, the starvation, the barbarity. You're not treated like human beings. He said, this is like Guantanamo or Abu Ghraib. This is what we're talking about, is Israel's Abu Ghraib moment. What we're talking about here is war crimes, very grave war crimes, the torture and abuse of prisoners. Why the ICC, despite the mountain of evidence which now exists, has been unable to look for arrest warrants against the people directing this barbarity is utterly baffling and completely wrong. By failing to act in the face of so much evidence, the International Criminal Court is itself sanctioning this gross abuse, this inhumanity, which is going on all the time now in Israeli prisons. The evidence of what is happening in Israeli jails, or should we call them torture camps, shows that Israel has passed through some awful invisible barrier and is now a very sick society. The silence of mainstream media and most senior Western politicians, I'm afraid, shows that we too have entered into the same nightmare moral universe as Israel's Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir and Prime Minister Netanyahu. However uncomfortable or difficult the story is, Double Down News will cover it. Unlike so much of the mainstream British media, if you can, please support Double Down News on Patreon. And my book, Fate of Abraham, Why the West is Wrong About Islam, speaks very directly to many of these themes we've been discussing today.
My name is Adil El-Sharqawi. I am a Canadian pediatrician specialized in the care of newborn babies. I was in Gaza in April this year. During my visit to Gaza, I witnessed the genocide, the war crimes, and the dehumanization of people of Gaza. The most vulnerable population, the children, the pregnant ladies, and the nursing mothers, was targeted with these crimes. Unfortunately, even newborn babies wasn't excluded. and most of the neonatal unit in Gaza was either completely or partially destroyed. During these 2 weeks while I was there, the death rate was very high, and babies die either from infection because of lack of sanitary supplies, lack of proper antibiotic, or laboratory testing. A lot of babies are starving, emaciated because of lack of formula. Even simple plastic tube with which we can feed preterm babies was absent, and babies was starving because of that. In some nights, we receive few babies dead on arrival where they have been born in the tent, where there is no medical supervision. They get a cold trauma or complication of delivery. We demand the immediate ceasefire, stop killing the children, and open the border for medical, humanitarian, food, and clean water supply. I welcome any challenge to my testimony, and I am ready to go to Gaza with any impartial third party.
בסוף זה לא רק החטופים שלא הצליחו וזה מחדל מטורף. שהוא היה על השולחן וכבר אמרו, האשמות היו, ומה קורה איתנו? כמה נפגעי נפש מסתובבים בינינו? אם אפשר להגיד רגע לירז, איפה הוא איבד אותי? הוא איבד אותי ביום שהוא הגיע לכפר עזה. נכנס לבית של נרצחים, וכאילו זה לא מספיק מה שעברנו, ביים את המקום, נכנס עם אילון מאסק, הכניס עגלול פנימה שלא היה שם, זרק בפנים תרמילים של תחמושת, ואחרי זה, יום אחרי אני הייתי שם וזה הזרוק בחוץ. מי שמביים, אחרי הטבח שעברנו את ה7 באוקטובר כדי להוציא, זה אומר שהוא לא מבין מה קרה לנו, והוא לא לוקח אחריות, ושמה הוא איבד אותי. אני הייתי בשוק שראיתי את זה.
الوضع الواحد مش عارف وين مصيره. ممكن تكون ماشي الحين، ممكن الحين انت تصورنا وانا شايفك، ممكن الحين الف من هنا، ممكن استشهد لا سمح الله، او ممكن انا الحين ما اشوفكش. يعني احنا في حاله الناس صارت حالتها كآبه ويأس، فاقدين الامل في الحياه. الناس صارت تصرخ في الشوارع احنا عايشين ومش عايشين، زي كانه بغصبك تحكي يا ريتني اموت، وبدوش بدك توصل للموت وهو بدوش اياك توصل. بدهم ايانا نعيش في ذل. والله احنا زي ما شايف صامدين، رجعنا على كله، رجع على داره. حتى المستهدفين، هاي هذا مستهدف رجع على داره، وهذا مستهدف رجع على داره، مع ذلك صامدين والحمد لله. وبكل فخر احنا شعب ما بننزل، وبكل فخر احنا شعب صمود، وباذن الله وفي كل دقيقه احنا واقفين فيها هنا رباط، وباذن الله كله هذا في ميزان حسناتنا ان شاء الله باذن الله. والله يوقع في قذائف المحتل الاسرائيلي اللي بيستهدف الاطفال والنساء والشيوخ والكبار اللي مش قادرين يتحركوا، يعني الاطفال الصغار هدول اللي مرميين بالشوارع، ايش ذنبهم؟
Please stop and watch this video. I'm not asking for your money, but there are two things that I want to alert you to that I feel like not enough people are talking about. Number one, the violence in the West Bank. On September 6th, Israeli troops withdrew from Jenin and Tulkarim, both of which are in the West Bank, after 10 days of raids that caused extensive damage and mass casualties. The occupation forces' actions left both cities with incredibly damaged infrastructure, homes, and utilities. Despite the withdrawal, many of those who live in the cities are still terrified that this will happen again, or that it will escalate even further. This specific incident of the expansion of the genocide into the West Bank started on August 28th and has resulted in 36 Palestinian deaths and numerous injuries. Along with this, Israel has recently appointed Elad Goren as the head of the humanitarian civil effort in the Strip. This role aims to manage civilian affairs amid ongoing conflict, and it specifically highlights Israel's goal to exert even more control over Gaza. Goren will be in charge of overseeing humanitarian aid, border operations, infrastructure restoration, and coordination with international organizations. To put it bluntly, they are gearing up to control Gaza even more, and will have all control over specific access points like the Rafah crossing. The news is not highlighting this, and we know why. So please make sure this doesn't get swept under the rug, and share this with your communities and your friends and your family.
Fed up, fed up, fed up, fed up, fed up.
better bomb better. Better, better, better bomb better. Better bomb better with the drugs. Better with the fake love, but the gun of a bang on, bang on. Better with the drama. Gotta grieve for my mama, cause I don't think I'ma do too much longer. Mom better. Better, 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 better bomb better. Better, better, better bomb better. Better bomb better with the drugs. Better with the fake love, but the gun of a bang on, bang on. Better with the drama. Gotta grieve for my mama, cause I don't think I'ma live too much longer. Mom better.
With the fame, I'm sick of reading my name and any other way that I intend to fit up with all of these motherfuckers misunderstanding me. I'm fed up with the ones that try to say you abandon me. Returning to the back and motherfuckers abandon me. You think I'm sitting up with everything when I can't just think I'm living in
לאן זה הולך? לדעתי, תוך פחות משנה, יהיו אזרחים יושבים בעזה.
Seen this? So the colonizer is exterminating and vaccinating children at the same time to protect themselves from the horrors they've created. I mean, no shit. Bombing critical infrastructure causes rampant disease? What? How about you stop bombing them? I swear the cynicism of this rotten regime knows no bounds. Cancel the colonizer, cancel Israel, ramp up the motherfucking resistance.
Let's listen to an Israeli podcast.
Because in Gaza, maybe there's mass destruction, but there's not massive death.
Have these people become permanently brain dead? How can you have massive destruction in one of the most densely populated areas in the world and not have massive death?
We're not advocating to target children, but
if you say we are not advocating to target children and there is a but at the end of that sentence, you belong in prison.
But forgive us if we don't give a shit. If, you know, everybody there dies.
This is the longest running English podcast in Israel, going since 2016. They claim it to be free-flowing discussions with fascinating voices. I beg to differ.
If you gave me a button to just erase Gaza, every single living being in Gaza would no longer be living tomorrow, I would press it in a second.
I have not seen one Israeli content creator come out and combat this rhetoric. Keep in mind, every Israeli citizen has to legally serve in the military. How do you think someone like him is treating Palestinians on the front lines?
Give me that button and press it right now.
There you go.
And I think most Israelis would.
Don't bully, don't stoop to their level.
I don't know what the word "your" here is supposed to imply, but unless my culture kidnaps 10,000 people at a time and puts them in military prisons where they torture, abuse, sexually violate, and rape them as a matter of operating procedure as per the United Nations Independent Commission of Inquiry and as per B'Tselem, and executes 2,000 children every month in cold blood, it doesn't seem like you have a point. Israel is a sick, sick, sick society that has no comparison on earth at this time.
All of the disasters I've seen combined, 40 mission trips, 30 years, ground zero, earthquakes, all of that combined doesn't equal the level of carnage that I saw against civilians in just my first week in Gaza.
And when you say civilians, is it mostly children?
Almost exclusively children. I've never seen that before. Never seen that. I've seen more incinerated children than I've ever seen in my entire life combined. I've seen more shredded children, missing body parts, being crushed by buildings, the greatest majority, or bomb explosions, the next greatest majority. We've taken shrapnel as big as my thumb out of 8-year-olds, and then there's sniper bullets. I have children that were shot twice.
Wait, you're saying that children in Gaza are being shot by snipers?
Definitively. I have 2 children that I have photographs of that were shot so perfectly in the chest I couldn't put my stethoscope over their heart more accurately, and directly on the side of the head in the same child. No toddler gets shot twice by mistake by the world's best sniper.
This is a textbook example of using other people's suffering to play the victim. Now, I saw that video yesterday and thought to myself, wow, something bad must have happened, right? This is in New York City, and she is the one that is violently screaming at the protesters.
People make me sick! You make me sick! Supporting terrorism! You support terrorism!
They are not even paying attention to her, and she calls them vicious while holding her daughter that she made cry. It's important to be aware of tactics like this because Zionists and many others will use fear-mongering and crocodile tears to try to change the narrative of a peaceful protest. This type of narrative allows the media to run away with it and paint the protesters in whatever light they want. And stories will circle saying, "Did you hear about that violent protest in New York City?" Well, now you know.
Terrorist support? Yeah, okay, let's see. Let's get your license plate. Oh, yeah.
No, I'm sorry.
Your terrorist supporting actions makes my daughter cry. An American was shot and killed yesterday.
Because they will say things like, don't you care about the hostages? Don't you care about the American that died? While simultaneously ignoring the tens of thousands of Palestinians that have been killed in the last 11 months. Because in their head, no amount of Palestinian lives will ever be equal to one Israeli life.
What blows my mind and that is so crazy to me is that you need to be insane to think of what's happening around the world and justifying it, and to normalize and condition society to turn a blind eye to the injustices around the world. I don't think it's normal for the way that we're living. And to be quite honest, it goes against human nature itself. Capitalism goes against human nature. Homelessness, that's not what we're meant to have. People should be housed. Current ongoing genocides that are happening today to indigenous communities, exploitation for resources and land, the mental health crisis due to capitalism and what's going on around the world. None of this is normal. We're not meant to live on this earth the way that we are now. And so to me, when I look at everybody and they're like, does anyone else feel like this? It's like, yes, you should be feeling like that because what's going on around the world isn't normal. And I find it utterly insane that the governments gaslight us into believing and manipulate us, basic narcissism, that what's happening around the world is something that doesn't involve us, or it's that we should not care about it, or if we do care about it, we're on the wrong side. Freedom and liberation are intertwined. You cannot have freedom without liberation. Freedom fighters are there because they're being oppressed. Communities are fighting for basic human rights. If they don't fight, then they're not going to exist. History books are rewritten by the winners. None of this is normal, and it shouldn't feel normal. But what you need to do, and what I have had to learn even right now, is how to adjust into the hope and the radicalism of knowing that we can do better for our communities, that we can organize, that we can strategize, that we look back at the previous like radicalists or whatever and take notes of what they taught us that we can bring forward into this generation. Because I feel like as much as we can say that generational trauma is a part of us, so is generational liberation, so is the strategies, so is generational healing. You cannot have one without the other.
Canada claims to export approximately $20 million worth of military equipment annually to Israel. But here's the twist. 53% of Canada's military exports go to the US, Israel's biggest arms supplier. This raises the question, how many of the supposed non-lethal weapon components being shipped from Canada are being assembled into lethal weapons in the US? How many of these weapons, initially built in Canada, end up in the hands of the terrorist Zionist military? There are currently no regulations that require the Canadian government to report the transfer of domestically manufactured weapon components to the US, even those that might be later sent to Israel. For example, F-35 components are manufactured in a dozen countries, including Canada, and transported to the US to be assembled into lethal fighter jets used by the Zionist military on the people of Gaza. This is only made possible because of private logistics companies like Maersk, who facilitate the transport of weapons and weapon components from the imperial core to the Zionist state. Maersk has guaranteed the consistent supply of destruction, death, and massacre in Gaza. This is why the Palestinian youth movement is calling for an international campaign targeting Maersk. Our role is to confront Zionism on all fronts, starting with the disruption of the global flow of capital and logistics. Our demands are 1. End all transportation of weapons and weapons components. 2. Cut all contracts that fuel genocide. And 3. An immediate arms embargo.
Another warning also, anybody with their comments and your weird ass sending me emails and stuff like that, you will be blocked. And I'm telling you right now, my ancestors and angels don't take it lightly. I forgive you, okay? But don't be surprised of all the shit that's going to start happening to you for trying to mess with my energy or anybody who is around me, okay? Good luck with that. And you will be blocked. So, I don't give a fuck. So, your comments are not, everything is, I know I'm being monitored. I know I'm being watched and all that. I know. Right? Because the truth is too revealing, right? A lot of you're comfortable with the fucking lies, right? The fake and misinformation and propaganda, right? Because the truth is so harsh that a lot of your embarrassment and guilt and shame is too much to handle. Good. You're supposed to feel that. All of us should. This is not normal, and it should not be normal. Anyways, I'll come back. These are the videos for now. I'll come back and bring more information for now. Continue boycotting, continue divesting, continue sending emails to your representative. If you can donate eSIM so that people from Palestine are able to continue, have internet and stuff. Please continue sharing education, Congo and Sudan as well. And free Palestine, free Congo, and free Sudan, and free all the oppressed people. And fuck Israel. Have a good day.